And Dusterhoff.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Please stand for the pledge. We're going to all mute and let Dr. Arnold do the recite it for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Okay, the special meeting, not special meeting. Sorry, this is a meeting to allow for public comment on the request for waiver of School Code 17-1.5, administrative expenditure limitations. Sandy, did we have anyone who wanted to speak?
Not for this, no.
Okay. This is something we'll cover and actually approve later in the meeting. All right, so I need a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting.
Well, do we want to have Dave just kind of explain it for the public hearing component of it?
Okay, yeah, we can do it here instead of, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Okay.
If there's any questions.
All right, thank you. So with our budget for FY21, we are looking at a budgeted expenditure amount that is greater than the 5% that was estimated as actual expenditures from FY20. So for every fiscal year, the function items can only increase 5% year over year without having to ask for permission from both the board and the legislature. This year, we are seeing an increase over the 5% because we have hired our director of curriculum position. That was one that was hired as of July 1st of 2020. So what we are seeing then is that the budgeted expenditures for FY 2021 will go over that number. If you recall from last year, I did bring this to the board's attention. We had to go through this process prior. We anticipate that this will be the last year as administrative positions have been solidified, and we would anticipate FY22 not needing to do this again. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, not hearing any. I need a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. All right, we are adjourned for this portion. Let me move to the next meeting. There we go. All right. All right, I call to order our regular meeting of October 20th, 2020 at 7:04. Roll call, please.
Adamchuk.
Here.
Gurecki.
Here.
Ferkaluk.
Here.
Houlihan.
Here.
Middleton.
Here.
Swice.
Here.
Dusterhoff.
Here. All right. All right, so requests for agenda items not already on the agenda. All right. Dr. Arnold, recognitions and celebrations.
Yeah, so make sure I'm on. Congratulations, we have 2 board members. For the public's information, our Board of Education, like nearly all boards of education in Illinois, are members of the Illinois Association of School Boards. It's their professional organization. And there is, with any professional organization that's worth anything, there are ways to pursue additional learning, and show your commitment to growing your craft. And so we have 2 board members tonight who have a recognition. We actually, I think, Sandy, there's some kind of a hardware that comes along with this. Just for the public's information, board members get paid $0 to do this work. And every once in a while, they get a small token for their efforts from the association. So it gives us great pleasure to recognize Matt Dusterhoff and Jim Gorecki for their efforts as earning different levels of master board designations. So congratulations to both, and proud of that hard work you put in.
Very good.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, principal recognitions. Yes, October is the annual Principals Recognition Month. And isn't Principals Day, was it already, Dr. Arnold?
You know, there's Principals Day, there's Bosses Day. We lose track of them, but I know that October is Principal Appreciation Month. And so the one thing I would say about our 4 principals, we have a phenomenal team. And I always want to note that it's not just our principals, it's also our directors. So when we look at our principals, starting with Walsh, we have Teresa Martin, we have Kathy Slee, Lisa Like, and Sue Forecash as our principals. I also want to recognize our directors. We have Greg Bullock, Director of Technology. We have former board member, Nora Skensos, our Director of Student Services. We have Jamie McCluskey, our Director of Curriculum. Dave Blashley, who's on with us, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. And Gary Mosier, our Director of Building and Grounds. That whole team needs to be recognized during the month of October. So I would encourage all staff, students, even parents, if there's something that they've done over the past year to touch you or help you to support our students, please reach out and let them know. I think that's important. And I do want to note that just like our teachers have had a year like we don't want to ever remember again, you know, there's normally a time in the summer where we recharge batteries. At least principals can sometimes take some time off. They didn't. You know, this during the pandemic, this has been not a lot of vacation days, a lot of work, heavy lift. So I really want to, in that, mention the efforts of our principals to find a way to navigate a pandemic that we've never been through before. So tremendous kudos to our admin team, especially those 4 principals. Couldn't have a better team. So thank you.
All right, section for public comments. I don't have my normal little speech with me, but this section is allows for the public to make comments on topics presented on the agenda. Commenters are asked to limit their comments to 5 minutes, and we ask for certain information, address, and other contact information so that the board can follow up later with any responses to the public comments. Sandy, do we have any public comments?
I did get an email from a person named Julie Buckley. I don't know if she's on or if she wants to speak. She didn't exactly say.
All right, if she is here using the chat features, if she could raise her hand if she would like to speak.
I don't see anyone of that by that name.
Okay.
Sandy did say it looked like more questions than a public comment. Look one more time under Julie, J for Julie. Do not see that name.
Okay. And so Dr. Arnold, I'd ask you to follow up with any of those questions.
Yep.
Tomorrow or Wednesday. Oh no, tomorrow or Thursday. Okay. Sorry, this new version of the software, I'm struggling a little bit to get through. Oh, there it is. Now I got it to follow along on the agenda. There we go. Administrative reports. Dr. Arnold, you're up.
Okay. Really 2 to really discuss, and I will reshare my screen. The strategic plan, we did a lot of good work last year on that, and I do want to, is this visible? There it is. I do want to, this is in the board book, it's available for the public. This is just the high level view. What we are in the process of doing administratively is developing an action plan. There were initially, as of about 2 weeks ago, probably 3 or 4 things that we are going to move forward strongly with. Given where we are after talking with staff, I know that if you're not in education, it's hard to think of how much of a pull either being in person in a hybrid model where you're teaching remotely in the afternoon or being full remote is. It is a true heavy lift for teachers, even after doing it this long. They're doing well, but it's still a tremendous amount of work. It is so different, and the planning is unlike it's ever been in the past. So because of that, there is only one area that I'm going to recommend that this year we set a goal for, and that is social emotional learning. That's under learning culture goal 2 from our strategic plan. And I'd like to have a brief discussion with the board about answer any questions about, why just one. Normally, we only want to highlight 2 or 3 at the most big strategic priorities to identify and move forward with. Now, this doesn't mean that administratively we aren't doing other things to move the strategic plan forward, but the only thing that we need to be doing right now is focused on the social emotional aspect for our staff and our students. And in almost everything I do, it's students first. Students drive everything. But when I've done implemented social emotional practices in past in other districts, the one thing I've learned is it's just like being on an airplane with your oxygen mask. They always tell you that if you have a small child next to you and the oxygen mask drops down, put it on yourself first so that you can care for the child next to you. And when it comes to social emotional learning, if our teachers, if our staff, if our administrators aren't all on the same page of what social emotional learning is for adults, then we aren't ready to really go there in a quality way with what social emotional practices look like with students. So that doesn't mean that we do nothing with students. We have had a second step curriculum for the past several years. We are implementing that, but this is not a curriculum that we're looking at. We're looking at implementing district-wide standards and practices around what do we expect to be tight as opposed to loose with social emotional learning district-wide. So we have an SEL task force that we are in the process of forming. The next piece would be to use that task force to begin to draft an action plan to bring back to the board by January to get the board approval for moving forward with that goal for the year. And at that same time, we will address in a different way some of those other 4 goals. But the one very visible public goal that we will put all of our professional development behind and everything else, we're recommending as administration and teaching staff to focus on social emotional learning, beginning with adult competencies and then moving to student competencies.
Do we need to modify the language and the goal? Because obviously it reads right now is very focused on the students, but you spent some time talking about the staff piece, which resonates with me. I think that's spot on. Do we need to update the language so that when we go back and look at how we did, we're reflecting on the right work that happened?
Yeah, it's a good point. The way we'll write goals for the strategic plan is if it's important enough for us to focus on as a district-wide, then it's important enough to be a goal that isn't something you could achieve in 1 year. It's going to be a multi-year goal. So the goal itself will be written in a multi-year format, and that's the strategic priority the board would approve. And then incrementally, we would have a year 1 goal, a year 2, and a year 3 that gets us to that 3-year target. So if that helps, I don't think we have to go back. Ultimately, our goal is focused on the social emotional learning of students, but starting where we are doesn't mean that we are taking our eye off the ultimate goal of students. It's just going to take us multiple years to get that realized.
Okay, and that makes sense. I think maybe thinking about just because of what we're living through right now, I know there's a big impact on the teachers like immediately right now from an SEL perspective. So thinking about a task force being formed that's more work, unfortunately, on the same teachers who have to kind of deal with the SEL component of it in a January timeframe. I don't, I'm wondering if there's ways to accelerate that a little bit, so we get them the tools that they need and the help that they need, as fast as possible. Again, in the service of get them right, get them in a spot that makes sense, so they can then turn their attention to to the students. I'm not, you know the work better than I do that has to go into this. I'm just trying to be creative and think of ways to make this move faster and maybe less burdensome on an already overburdened staff.
Right. That's kind of the trick, isn't it? Because when you talk about moving forward quickly and a burden, it's a tough mix. Faster you go, the harder it is. We have 2 meetings tentatively scheduled, not this week, but we are working on a date to solidify for next week and a date for the following week. So by the first week of November, we will have already had 2 meetings under our belt. After that second meeting, which will be prior to the November board meeting, I'll have a much clearer picture on how quickly we can move to bring an action plan back. I would be very surprised if it was the November board meeting. I won't say it's impossible to do the December board meeting, but under the theory of under promising and over delivering, if I tell you January, I can deliver in January, and we expect sooner. But January is where I'd feel comfortable without pushing people too hard. It's really tough to determine how quickly we can move given the pandemic. I hate to keep saying it, but that's
no, I with you, and I understand. I certainly say I maybe more succinctly. If there's opportunities to implement things, in the near term, or if there's good suggestions or good things that can be done to lessen the burden and to give the teachers the SEL they need, and they can be done quickly, just like we did with, kind of going back, we gave the freedom to pull the trigger and do it faster versus waiting for the board and waiting for, let's move a little bit faster. Again, if you have agreement or around the table and through the staff that this makes sense and this is not additional work and this actually will help, then I'd be in favor of moving faster, along those lines versus waiting until that January piece, even if it's small incremental changes.
sure. And it is more work. I mean, I don't want to act like this will blend in and not feel like extra work, but that's what the strategic plan is about. What initiatives are we putting our weight behind? In a normal year, we'd be talking about 2, maybe 3. And right now I'm talking about just 1 this year. Now I would say, I want to again publicly acknowledge the fact that for several years, we have been implementing an SEL curriculum through Second Step with our students. So it's not as if we're starting and we don't know kind of where we're going or what we're doing, but we don't have an aligned approach around a framework as a district. And that's going to take some time to develop, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things going on for staff at the building level. That doesn't mean there aren't things going on for students on a daily basis from the teachers already. They are. How we can, what we don't have in place that is part of this goal, when you're putting together a model SEL program, how do we know how we're doing? What measurements are we using to assess our progress? How do we know the impact this is having on students? Those are the systemic things that we need to take some time to really plan out and create an action plan around developing that system. But the pieces are there and they have been in students' hands. We know that that's been important last spring, this summer, and again this fall for students.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, and I'll drop the conversation, is what we found in our organization as we're working through this. Everybody's working at home, and there's obviously added stress everywhere. Is addition by subtraction is always very welcome, especially at the staff level. If we can take things off their plate, that always again allows them to narrow in and focus on the thing that matters most versus some of the other things. So I'm glad to see we're narrowing from a strategic perspective. We're not going to focus on anything else except the thing that makes sense. And just again from that staff perspective, the more that we can have them focus on the most critical items, that makes the most sense.
I just think I need to echo though that while we have to be careful of adding things onto staff, we also have to prioritize things that are essential. And the social emotional needs of our students at this point are far and above where they've ever been. And if our teachers don't have the tools, then they're not effectively teaching our kids. And so we need to make sure that we put this in with integrity and fidelity throughout the district. You know, social emotional learning right now is the #1 primary objective in just about every school district, because our kids are not handling the, you know, current predicaments that they're in, you know, without having any support. So I love the idea of putting it through. I volunteered myself to be on that committee. I can speak from my own experience of trying to implement a full-scale SEL curriculum. It is not quick and easy work. It is not something that you can do that is simple and here's a package and a plan and let's throw it together and put it in. It is time intensive. It is something that is very, very involved, and the staff is going to see the benefit of it once they can see the whole picture of it together.
Yeah, no, Grant, I hear you, and I agree. I think, you know, maybe going back to Dr. Arnold's first point, right? If the teachers don't have SEL in their own lives, it's very difficult for them to pass that on, right? So it's you know, you're 100% right. The students need the help, absolutely. We just can't help them if the folks doing that work aren't in a good place themselves, right?
And I just want to point out for the board and the community that the good work we're talking about was frozen in time in March. This was supposed to be the conversation that we had at the April board meeting of last year. So it really has been frozen in time. We're thawing out the strategic plan now. And as much as I would prefer to be aggressive in this area, our experience tells us we need to go slow to go fast, and we're doing the right things first. So this is a conversation that will be continued. It was just a chance to share that. Just for the board's information, I won't go through these other items. This is public information. We do have our annual summative school designations. Can you see the board agenda on the screen? Does that show up?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you click on that link, all of our schools and all the schools in the state were designated to remain at their prior year's summative designation from ISB. And that's because there was no assessment last spring. ISB is currently telling us that, as the Illinois State Board of Education, ISB is currently telling us that there is still a plan for the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, the Illinois Science Assessment, the other state test to be administered this spring. So we do believe we're being told right now we'll have a 2020 version, but there was no a 2021 version. There was no 2020 state assessment.
Hey, Tim, can I ask maybe a dumb question? Is there any way out of that? You know, is there a waiver? Is there, you know, extenuating circumstances that can be written up to get us off the hook again, in the mindset of taking some of the burden off yourself and the admin team and the teachers, and not having to respond to that kind of stuff and put extra things on everybody that you know, perhaps don't give us the greatest benefit right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that idea. And as much as I'm a planner and I'm used to planning weeks, months, and years out, I'm not clear on what next week's going to look like. So from a state perspective, right now, there is no option for that. Whether that changes in December, in March, I don't know. But no, there is no option to opt out at this time. Everything is fluid right now. Make that caveat.
Tim, can we go to, we skipped over 1A.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was 1A? Yes. How could I miss that? Okay. Sorry, I'm getting used to this new board book too. It's a different look.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much the board would like me to talk about. I know there's been some questions about contact tracing I'd be happy to address. But I think the long and short of it is the public facing version. And I do like to show, I'm going to take this little time for an advertisement. Any staff, any parents, if your child has COVID symptoms, or you think there's something you need to let the school know about, or they do test positive for COVID, please go to our main landing page and click on this COVID-19 reporting. It takes you right to this form. You fill it out, and I and our head, or she's now being called the head COVID nurse, Patty McGuire, we get emails as soon as you hit submit for this. And this is how we are notified. So I want to make sure that people know that's there. But also from the beginning of this school year, we've had this chart. I pulled up here, and this is kind of what got us to the point last week. You can see that if I pull up this chart, and you can do this at home too, going all the way back to we came back to in-person with Walsh on September 30th. These are broken up by COVID positive staff, quarantine staff at that time, COVID positive students, and quarantine students. You can see right before the first day, we had our first quarantine for a student. And then it went up a little steady. And you can see that Ludwig and Reed began on this Friday, and we had Oak Prairie, the first half of Oak Prairie began on this Monday. So we're pretty steady, a little bit of an uptick, and then we went to the 30s and 40s. And so we were there very comfortably. What's important to note is that none of our identification practices by the nurses, nothing changed. So it isn't a change in how we were doing our job. It's a change in the cases that were coming to us. And by the cases for the quarantine, I mean students who presented a COVID symptom. We know that not every one of these students was positive, and that's why let me move forward, and then when we got to the 40 here, last weekend was our first rough weekend, not this past one, but the weekend of the 12th, the 10th, 11th, and 12th. That was a rough one. That's when we started getting the positives coming in, and more of the quarantine questions, things like that. You can see that on that date, we had staff starting to become positive and students. And so that was a busy weekend for those things. And then the dam really broke on that Tuesday. So we look at the numbers. Once again, our nurses didn't do anything different. They just kept following the protocols, and the numbers, I'm trying to shift my screen so I can read this. As you can see, the numbers doubled in a day, and we went from 83 to 94 to 96. On the 15th, that's last Thursday, we had our first case of 2 positives in the same classroom, which by definition is an outbreak. I think of an outbreak as a lot more, but by definition, the health department says 2 in a classroom, you have an outbreak. That class, so where we started the day was knowing that we'd have to quarantine that one classroom. And that's the protocol we always knew we'd have to do. But in looking at the rest of the building, the conversation turned to, what do you do about the rest of the school? You can see where you're at 5 staff and 3 students, 94, 96 in quarantine. We have a situation on our hands. And so I've explained how we got to that point of making the decision around 10%. I didn't pull that number out of the air. But in working with the health department, we realized that we had 3 of our schools in a bad spot. It didn't make sense to just do 3 schools and not the 4th. So we made that decision. It hasn't gotten better. So when I look at, there's Friday, and then last weekend was worse than the previous weekend. So now we are currently, as of Monday, this is always at least a day behind, so we make sure we have accurate numbers. We have, as of yesterday, 8 staff testing positive, 14 quarantined. Those are both highs. And then 3 students and 69, 3 students positive, 69 quarantined. You would expect with the 14-day mitigation period that we put in place last Thursday, that the quarantining would be down to near 0 by the end. That's what we would expect for students. Staff, we hope for the same thing. We expect that. We'd expect the positives to be down, although you would expect that if you're assuming that all the positives are coming from inside D92. And that is not the majority of our experience. The majority of our experience is that these are contacts that are coming from somewhere outside the district They are not necessarily being spread in the district in our schools. So with that being said, I won't say with certainty that we will be down in our numbers. I hope we are. I had another phone call again tonight. Literally almost every night we're getting someone calling saying, here's the deal. I tested, or my wife just is tested positive. I have to be quarantined, the whole 9 yards. So I cannot say with any certainty where we'll be. Our target, our plan was to quarantine for 14 days, the whole district, and then to come back on the 30th. I can't say enough. The board, teachers, parents, students, we want students in school safely. We all want the same thing. But we also know that as of today, it was announced that Will and Kankakee counties are going to the next level down for mitigation efforts beginning this Friday. So that does not give me a lot of optimism about where we're going. But let's talk about contact tracing a little bit. Here's where I do have to show this chart, and I apologize. I've shown it before, but I think it's, can you see that chart? Did that show up? Somebody give me a yes. You guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I'm not going to go through the chart, but what I want to make very clear is that you could be quarantined for 14 days in this green column. There's not really a way around that. Okay. But if you have a symptom, and this is important for all of our quarantines of all of our students, and I explained this on the parent Zoom last Thursday and to the staff last Thursday. If you have a symptom and you don't have a diagnostic test or a clinical evaluation from a doctor, you're in the orange column, that's 10 days. But you can get out of that column if you would go to the doctor. There's a very specific note the doctor needs to write. This is new guidance as of last Tuesday. It's in red. I'm not going to read it, but the doctor basically has to say, this individual may come back to work or school and they do not have COVID. This is the symptoms are due to some other condition, allergies, whatever. That student can come back. That staff member can come back. It could be a day out and that's it. That would keep our quarantine numbers down. That would be a game changer. Then we know that, well, you have to be symptom free before you come back. So as long as the symptoms are gone, even if it's not COVID, but it's only a couple of days potentially. But still, we've had plenty of examples of students being out one day, they go to the doctor, they get the correct note, has to be the correct note, and they come back. That keeps our quarantine numbers down. That keeps everybody safe. That keeps us in school. The other option is you could be in the blue column with a negative test, but you do have to pay attention to the red letters here, RT-PCR. It's the only thing we can accept. That's new as of last Tuesday also. So those are two ways that we can keep our quarantine numbers down and not hit that 10% mark. That takes a team effort. Positive is positive. There's no way out of positive. There's no way out of green, being a close contact and asymptomatic. So let's talk about close contacts for a minute. Some of that information is here, but I can tell you that our nurses and I take this very seriously. If it's 9 o'clock at night and I get a call from a staff member, the first thing we go through is contacts. Tell me who your close contacts were. And if they say, I haven't had any close contacts, then I grill them a little bit. I do it in a nice way, but it isn't just oh, I don't have any, okay, and move on. We really explore going back 2 days prior to the symptoms, 2 days prior to the positive test. What was your day like? Who did you interact with? What meetings did you have? If it's a student, did you ride the bus? Who do you sit by in class? We have seating charts for classes. We have seating charts for buses that we look at. We talk to the teachers. Now, this is where everybody likes to say, not everybody, that's not fair. It's easy for a person to say, well, if you're not going to tell me who the positive person is, how do I know you're being truthful or thorough with your job? If that's your mindset, I can't help you. You're just going to have to go through life not trusting anybody. We cannot, it's not even HIPAA. We're really bound by just confidentiality. We cannot say, Timmy is testing positive. Have you as a teacher had any contact with Timmy less than 6 feet? There's ways we can get at that. I've even gone to our attorney and said, how can we get specific without violating any confidentiality? And one thing that I've tried is to give a list of individuals. Have you had any close contact with these 5 people? And it's almost like a lineup where you don't know which one is the one, but one of those 5 is it. I've gone to those links to do 2 things: protect our school from people who are close contacts and to help their safety and health, and 2, protect the identity of the student or staff member who is positive. That's it. And we're going to keep doing that. We don't have a choice. We will be safe and we will be confidential. So it doesn't matter how much. And I know we've got staff members who believe we're withholding information. I don't know how much more transparent. I don't know another district that puts their COVID cases like we do on the website for the whole world to see every day. I don't know who else is doing the reporting. And even today, there was one that in the mix of everything last Thursday and Friday, we had notified all the teachers, we had notified quarantine students. I forgot to send out the email to parents. Nobody likes to say, hey, I messed up, but I did today. I sent it out today for last Friday, Thursday, whichever it was. So if we make a mistake and not send it out right away, we'll send it out. But I can sleep at night knowing that on that Thursday and Friday, every close contact that we knew about was quarantined, and we were in the middle of a thorough search. Principals, there was a lot involved last Thursday and Friday. So it's typically the nurses, it's typically myself. There are some situations where we do have to phone the nurses. I'm sorry, the building principal. Maybe the principals have to help me out by looking at the bus charts. Maybe we have to go teacher to teacher, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's the nurses and myself who do the contact tracing because there is privacy involved and we are very confidential with that information. So that's an overview. I'd be happy to entertain any questions. There's nothing we're trying to hide. And I do have confidence in our safety and our thoroughness of the process. And I am proud of what we communicate publicly, and proud of the timeliness of it. And I did make a mistake last Thursday or Friday by not getting that out, but we did protect everyone in the meantime. And there's always a chance I'll make a mistake again. So what can I answer as far as questions?
Tim, with the quarantining number, obviously our number is going to go down with the kids not being in the building.
Sure.
We're going to have much less parent call-ins and identifying different types of symptoms. So how are we trying to get an accurate number if the kids aren't being called in? Is there anything we can do to do that? I'm thinking about at the high school and on a daily basis, we get, however many calls of a stomach ache or a headache or things like that, which contributes to those numbers. With kids being at home, there's no prompting to do that. So I just wanted to be transparent. Like that number may go down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a different situation.
Yeah, I think, Grant, that's very likely. And all we're asking parents to do is please keep reporting. And when you go to this form, it's on our main landing page. You put your email in, you put your name, your phone number, you check if you're reporting for an employee or a student, and the school. And then this is the key. If you say, I'm reporting for someone, the individual's positive, that takes you to a certain set of questions. You could say, I'm just reporting symptoms. My son or daughter has symptoms. Or if you're a staff member, I have symptoms. This is where you go to notify us. We prefer you not to call the school, don't call the principal. This form is set up for that main line of communication. You may not even be sure. You may think there's just something we need to know. There's a possible contact in my house. I'm not sure what to do. I'd like to talk to somebody. Click that box. And there's even a box that you don't even know what you want to report, but you think we should know. That's it. So there's 4 different choices. Pick one and we will follow up with you. Now, the student ones that come in the middle of the night, we don't necessarily jump on at midnight. But the phone calls, staff knows they can call my number at 2 in the morning. My cell phone's out there. And we get on it right away because if it's a staff and we're in session, we have to get subs and all that kind of stuff. The students, parents can keep them home and we'll catch up with them the next morning. But this is the way, Grant. I can't say that enough. Just come to the main landing page, hit that button and let us know. When you hit submit, multiple staff get an email, myself and the nurses, that says someone just completed the form, check it out. It's the tightest process we can have.
So Tim, I maybe picking up on Grant's point, right? So even in the best of cases in school, there's, we advocate for this and there's probably some percentage that it aren't going to do it no matter what, right? When we're out of school, the kids don't have to actually be in class. I imagine that falls off a cliff pretty quickly. So what I'm concerned about is we're setting ourselves up to think that the numbers have come down because we don't have the reporting, we don't have any way of knowing, but then we come back on the 30th, and then head right into Halloween and then election day, and then and there's going to be lots of close contact obviously through Halloween, that kind of thing. We come in that week after and the numbers just skyrocket and we go back remote. I'm fearful of this kind of being a pinball for the students, right? They get used to one thing, then we pull them back, we get used to another thing, and then obviously we're putting both the students and the staff at increased risk when we kind of go back and forth on this. So I hear you. There is no other way to get this information. We have to advocate for parents and staff to notify us, but I mean, we have to face reality that it's going to fall off a cliff. We're not going to know, and we might be walking right back into a buzzsaw on the 30th with numbers that are potentially worse, considering where the district and the state is going, or the district, the county and the state is going, right?
Yeah, 100%. I firmly believe those numbers will go down, and I would not throw a lot of money if I was a betting man on those numbers being accurate, because we're not in school. And you're exactly right. It's not going to be easy to know. What I would say as an educator is, if you're asking about the ping pong, we started out the year remotely. We know what we need to improve on and what we can do a little bit better. We've had 2 meetings last Thursday, and those were scheduled before we made the decision to go full remote. Just looking at the numbers last week, we saw where they're going on Tuesday and on Wednesday, which is when I scheduled the meetings for staff and for parents to do a little bit of a reset. Like, hey, let's look at how this works. Let's look at the contact tracing. Let's look at what it means to be quarantined, go to the doctor, get your negative test and come back. That was the intent of all that. It just so happened that ended up being the same day we had to go full remote. But there is a professional part of me that we know we do an incrementally better job being back in person. I'm well aware of that. We know that it's harder on everyone to be a ping pong ball and go back and forth. So I suspect that there's probably, I think we'd be kidding ourselves as a board if there wasn't a future conversation about where do we go long term. I would really like to see us come back on the 30th and put the practices in place that we have been talking about. It's essentially the same thing, but really monitoring our behavior, really looking at when someone has a symptom, not coming to school, going to the doctor, getting a negative test, and then coming back when it's clear. I want to see us do that before we go long term. I really do. It's not just my decision. I'm not trying to just pretend that it is, but my recommendation is let's try to come back on the 30th. And I am aware, we didn't make up dates. We picked 14 days because it's 14 days. That's the quarantine time. And I'm aware that it's awkward to come back on the 30th, which is a Friday. It's awkward to come back on a Friday, a Monday, and then we are not allowed to have school on election day. That's a new state law this summer. So even if we wanted to have Teacher Institute on the election day, we couldn't. So I know there's awkwardness in the schedule.
Is there a, I'm sorry, I mean, but is there,
that's it.
is there a, a pressing reason to come back on the 30th? Is there some date we have to hit? I'm just thinking through that weekend, the Monday, the election day. You know, would that Tuesday be a better day to come back, or that Wednesday be a better day to come back, considering everything we're facing over that weekend? You know, personally, I'm in a spot where, you know, I'm not even looking forward to going back at all, considering kind of where the district and where the county's going. When we decided to go back full, it made a lot of sense because all the numbers were driving in the right direction. Now, obviously, they're driving back in the wrong direction. I'm hearing other counties are, you know, advocating for full remote, and those are other counties. We got to deal with us. But in this narrow slice, looking at that 30th date, I'm just, you know, I guess I was more wondering if there was a specific reason we needed to come back on the 30th. If there was an obligation we needed to meet.
That's a good question. No, there's no specific reason. It was the day after the 14 days is expired. I will remind everybody that, you know, we still have weekly meetings with Will County superintendents through the ROE and the health department. And I'd like to see where I'm at this Friday. Those meetings happen right now. They're happening on Fridays. And so I think I don't know what my perspective will be on Friday. We'll keep looking at the numbers. Well aware that DuPage, kind of surprised that DuPage County Health Department recommended that all their schools go full remote. I have not heard that Will County Health Department is looking to make that recommendation or not. I'm not aware of that. So I will maybe have a different perspective on Friday.
And Jake, I understand sort of that awkwardness of Friday, Monday, no school, Tuesday, Wednesday, but like Dr. Arnold said, it's 14 days.
I get it. I mean, number is a number, but there's being reasonable too, right? I wouldn't want to push it to like 8, you know, we end up pushing it to like 18 days or 17 days, whatever it is, and that doesn't jive with the 14 days. But considering where we're landing and the impact on the students and everything else going in and out, in and out, I just trying to like make things a little bit cleaner and give us maybe a little bit more time for everything to kind of calm down.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. I think that's a very logical, I mean, I think anybody would look at the calendar and say that would make a lot of sense. They would understand why we would say Wednesday after election day. I'm not ready to say that yet. I'd like to see how this week goes. I'd like to see what the county does. Once again, mitigation efforts for us go in place Friday. So it's awkward coming back when things are going the wrong direction.
One thing you mentioned, Tim, too, was from on the staff side. Obviously, from a percentage, you know, there's a lot of staff, you know, a higher number of staff that have been either, you know, not necessarily quarantined, but I think it actually have symptoms or tested positive. If they're not symptomatic or they feel that they can work, do they have the option to work? Obviously not in the school, but do they have the option to work, or are they obligated to work remote? I apologize. I think we might have talked about this before, but
Sure.
I wanted some clarity on how that works, or are they given like COVID days off, or I don't know how this works.
Yeah, good question. It's we've created about 83 forms as a result of COVID. That's one of the forms we've created recently. If a staff member is quarantined or isolated due to being tested positive, and just to remind everybody, isolation is when you're positive. That's a different thing than when you're quarantined. You're not positive when you're quarantined, or we don't know you're positive. But in either situation, the staff member will get a form. It's being finalized. I think it's done. We want to run it through one more test. We've got a couple staff trying it out. And basically you record your days. We prefer, if you're healthy and legally, if you can do your job, this really goes back to the through ADA. If we can make an accommodation for an employee and they can do their job in a different way, we have to make that accommodation. And so the example I would use is our teachers could work remotely, administrative assistants, principals, all those kind of staff, parapros can work remotely to a large extent. A custodian cannot work remotely. Someone in maintenance, someone in food service cannot do their job remotely. And so that's the first question we would ask. If you can be quarantined, if you're healthy and can do your job remotely, then there are no sick days used. If you are quarantined and you cannot do your job for whatever reason, sick or sickness, or you're not able to, the FICRA leave, that's the Families First CARES Act, gives employees 10 days. Those days do not come out. We pay for them, but they do not come out of the D92 sick leave bank that employees have. After those 10 days are exhausted, then the employee would start using the sick days that they normally have from their D92 sick leave. So that's the progression. Someone could be quarantined if they could do their job remotely. They would use 0 sick days, FICRA or D92 days. And then if you couldn't, or if you were ill, you had COVID and you just couldn't work no matter what, you would use your FICRA 10 days first and then your D92 sick leave.
Is that, and I apologize, I know we're driving in on this, but just thinking about this sort of ping pong, right? If we're going back and forth, we have the similar teachers kind of being quarantined over and over again perpetually throughout the rest of the year. Is that 10 days, provided they have to be symptomatic, they have to have actual symptoms that are preventing them from working to use that FICRA, is that 10 days cumulative or per instance?
It's only 10, and that law is only valid through December 31st. So kind of a lot like what Congress in Washington is talking about right now. We're all wondering, do they extend it beyond December 31st? But right now, from the beginning, it's only been 10 days between the onset of the legislation going into effect and December 31st. You only get 10 days. You would think that might get extended, but
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, if we have a teacher who's, in a class and gets exposed in the class and then has symptoms and they can't work, and that happens once or twice, they're going to burn through those days pretty quick. Now they're burning through their own personal time because they were asked to be in a situation that was perhaps unsafe.
What we've seen is it's a little bit tougher to even go through those first 10. So your first step is not using any, teaching remotely. Your second step is those 10. But if you look at a given 2-week period, if you're quarantined or if it's 10 days for another reason, you're not probably going to use, or you'd be very close to not using all 10 of your days for one instance. And then obviously, yes, if it happened a second time, you'd be into your own D92 sick days. You're right. Okay. Any other questions about that? It certainly was not intentional for me to skim over that part. So that we went back to 7A. The last thing I'll say about notification is, like snow days, we never want to tell a parent with 24 hours notice or less that you have to make other arrangements for your child. We understand the difficulty that creates. We take that seriously. I will do everything I can if something changes by the end of this week, early next week, to communicate a different return to school date. We aren't about waiting to last minute. I do like to plan ahead, and I know parents need to plan ahead. I understand.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, keeping obviously the board and the parents as up to speed as possible, so they can, for lots of reasons, but chief among them, their ability to plan. I think that'd be great.
Okay, and
Okay.
I'll pass that off to Mr. Blashley.
All right.
Reports.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. All right, just a few things for this evening. First off, we've already covered the memo that's in the board packet for the estimated limitation of administrative costs. There's another memo that's in the board packet, which is a recommendation to increase our sub-para rate. So that's a daily rate. Right now, we pay $80 a day. And due to COVID and the challenges that we're having with subs across the board and the level that we're expecting of our subs and ensuring that we have a viable workforce, looking to increase that daily rate by $10 to $90 a day. And there's an action item later on for that. Two other things I did just want to update the board on. We applied and were approved for the Will County Coronavirus Relief Act grant. So we are going to be seeing $29,940 come our way in the next several weeks, is what we were promised from Will County. And so that was good news. And then the last item that I wanted to update the board on is we're looking at another minimum wage increase on January 1st of 21. This takes the minimum wage up to $11 an hour. If you recall, back in July, we just had the first one. And so really what I'd like to do is bring a recommendation forward to make sure that we're looking at all of our rates up to a certain level, to really guarantee that we're not compressing any of our rates due to the minimum wage increase. I will hopefully have a memo for next month, and then we can hopefully take action in December on that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Director of Student Services.
Thank you, Matt. Really nothing timely to tell you guys about, but you'll see in the board packet, there's an agenda item with just an overview. I know special ed looks a little different at each grade level, so I was able to break down for the board the early childhood, what it looks like in person versus hybrid or the remote, and then looking at the K-5 breakdown, and then the Oak Prairie. Oak Prairie is a little unique because even if the students are remote, they're streaming in. So they're getting the same hours of instruction, but for some of our needy learners, we indicated by their IEP what hours they should be in school to receive those services. And it seems to be going much better since we've made those changes. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those, but we've gotten into a good flow now.
All right. Director of Curriculum.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I just wanted to report to the board about our FastBridge benchmark assessment that we will be continuing this school year. Normally we take the test 3 times a year, in the fall, the winter, and the spring. We're going to continue that as well this year. We have changed our testing window a little bit this year to accommodate our remote hybrid schedule that we're following right now. So the students in grades 2 through 8 will be taking the FastBridge beginning the week of October 26th and the week of November 2nd. We've extended the window due to the fact that we went remote last week. Kind of suddenly, we wanted to give everyone time to plan and get back into the remote schedule again. Our kindergarten, first grade students will be taking common assessments, and then we'll be joining the rest of the population in January taking the FastBridge. The reason we're continuing with FastBridge is, we've all talked about the learning loss of our students since the pandemic in March, and we just want to assess where they're at right now so we could drive our instruction correctly. So we're going to look at their strengths and their weaknesses, and then we're going to assess the data. And then down the road, we're going to look at our data from January 2021 and compare it back to January 2020 to show growth that way. So we've changed the requirements a little bit this year to make it safe for students and for staff. We limited one-on-one testing components and are just doing a full screening at this point, and then we'll look at the data from there and then go deeper into that in order to determine the needs of our students. And I think that's it right now. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Hey, Jamie, oh, sorry, go ahead.
FastBridge will be able to be administered remotely or not until we come back?
No, it can be done both ways, Matt, which is really kind of an advantage for all of us right now. Oak Prairie is taking it remotely on their common AB schedule remote day, and 2 through 5 prefers to take it in person. So they're scheduled for that week of November 2nd. If we happen to be remote, they will be taking it remote. Then we've already made those arrangements, and we're training teachers and staff, so everybody will be prepared. And we simplified it so it'd be 30 minutes of reading and 30 minutes of math. But that way we'll get some data so we can move forward, so we could service our students that way.
Hey, Jamie, how does the data get assessed? Who is that done like programmatically through the computers where they're taking the test, or is that you? Is that your staff? How does that data analysis work?
as a district, we look at the data and we'll assimilate that, with our school psychologists, our principals, our reading specialists, our math interventionists. And then from there, we determine the need, probably looking at the lower 25% of the screening to see where we need to go a little bit deeper. Fastbridge has a lot of progress monitoring that we could use also with our special needs students. And there's a lot of training, and we'll be working on that as we go along.
From like a classroom teacher perspective, what are they part of that data analysis process? Are they asked to comb through that data too?
Yes, that is all shared and they have access to that. And as we move forward, we'll make sure everybody's trained and able to access the data. And then we like to do like a data review with our grade levels and our teachers, and not to point any fingers, but just to see where our students are at, so we could adjust our curriculum correctly.
Yeah, I guess where I'm driving is, a couple of things I kind of mentioned, a little bit earlier, where there's an opportunity to not add burden to the teachers and staff, we should do that. And if we're kind of walking into this understanding that the data is going to be imperfect because of all the extra stress on staff and students, just, really assessing, being thoughtful about the value of the time put in by the staff versus what we're actually getting it out of this, and can we make good progress based on that data. I fully understand the need to assess and understand where we are relative to where we started. Again, I'm just probably a little bit hypersensitive to adding anything that's not critical to educating the kids, beyond what the staff already asked to do.
Yes, we have taken all of that into consideration, and we've decided that this is the best plan for now. For example, we could have a second grade student sit in a classroom without showing any signs that they're struggling. And in this way, what if we just after we do the screening, the child's only reading at the first grade level, we've wasted all this time not servicing the needs of that child. So that's basically, it's going to be a quick snapshot. It's only going to, it's not going to take a lot of time away from learning, and most teachers are already trained on it and are used to it. So it's something that we've just been doing for many years now, and it's just,
I get it.
It's going to cause any more stress. I mean, believe you me, I wouldn't do that. That's why we've kind of shortened what we're doing, and we're trying to make it safe for everybody.
Yeah, no, I get it. And certainly in a normal year, it obviously makes sense. This the last thing, this thing is a normal year. Hopefully the teachers are in alignment. They agree with that. This is valuable time that they spend doing this work, and there's good output. So
I fully understand everything you're saying, and those are all things that we spoke about and we are considering.
Jake, if I could amplify something both of you said, and that's really something that we talk about all the time, and that is any assessment, doesn't matter what the assessment is, it needs to be worth the time that you lose instructionally to make a difference. So if it's going to take time to give an assessment to a student, that trade-off for the loss of instructional time better outweigh the loss of instructional time. And we have had that type of discussion around this topic. So you're both right. It better pay off.
Right. Yeah, no, and I know data is valuable, especially, now considering some of the loss of personal time, right? Obviously there's always the classroom teacher can say, hey, Timmy can't read at a second level, right? We don't necessarily need data to tell us that. We have the homeroom teachers, but I'll drop it from there. I appreciate the extra dialogue on it.
No problem.
All right, Director of Technology.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everybody. I just had a few short updates that I wanted to communicate to the board tonight. Number one, the couple of points of being things of focus for the technology department this year. Student devices, our 3-year iPad lease is coming up this year. And so we'll be putting together a technology committee to talk about which devices our teachers are looking for to help with instruction. Preliminarily, I would like to say that we'll have something to deliver to the board in the spring of 2021. SOPA, the Student Online Personal Protection Act. The new requirements for SOPA go into effect July 1st. We've been actively reviewing these, and we will continue to do so, and we will be beginning work on that to work towards compliance for that deadline of July 1st. We just completed our second phishing campaign. The results that we got to our initial baseline test in February are pretty similar. I think it's illustrates the need to supply some end user awareness training to our staff. And our goal is to conduct phishing campaigns once per quarter. And lastly, we are looking at a new parent-teacher conference scheduling system this year. It's called Meet the Teacher. So we're currently evaluating that. And one other, I guess, point of note on that is that it does allow for video appointments for virtual conferencing. So we hope to be wrapping that up in the next couple of weeks and disseminating information to staff and parents and administrators. So I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
A couple of things that real quick on the devices. I personal experience, it seems to me that iPads still seem readily available. I know Chromebooks have been a struggle to procure. Who knows what it will look like? But if there is a change to any of those devices and looking at other platforms besides iPads, too late in the spring could put us in a bad spot for availability. So it's a very difficult decision to make if there is a transition in device technology that we're going to look at. But spring could be late. And what was else? Oh, SOPA. Being an elementary district, do you see that being more restrictive than what we're already doing? I know for us at the high school, it's a little bit different. We're able to be a little bit more open in some of the things that we do because students are older than 13. So do you anticipate that being a lot of work for you and your staff?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. There's certainly a number of different data privacy acts that affect the students. There's a number of systems that we're using. Combining that with the posting or the reporting requirements, there will be some, I would say there will be some, how would I say, changes in the way that we do business when we look at technology and systems for next year.
All right. Thank you. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any questions on any of these items? These are items that are considered routine, and so the board acts on them in one motion. Hearing no question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know if it's a question necessarily. But if I'm following the agenda right, there was quite a few personnel moves, and there was quite a lot of documentation. I don't know if there's anything Dr. Arnold wanted to kind of walk us through. If there's anything that we wanted to note in terms of all the different movement that I saw in some of the personnel reports. Or if it, I looked through, I don't have any real concerns. There's just seemingly a lot more this month than in the past, especially within the custodial space. Is this all in response to cleaning requirements and everything else?
Yeah, the biggest thing is we continue to deal with resignations or retirements. There's reports out this week that I think 500 plus teachers across the state retired. I think we're past that. we had that was kind of like August and September, but now we have dealt with some custodians, custodial pieces, and some shuffling around. Yes, we had some filling of positions we needed to do. Nothing I'm worried.
There's no net ads here, right? This is all just
Correct. I would identify, the other piece of that is due to some of the shifting, we had some people who we might have had 2 part-time people, 4 hours each at an evening shift that we then shifted to 1 full-time.
Okay.
And Dave, do you want to confirm that we did not do a net ad for this? I just want to make sure I'm being accurate. Maybe Dave does not want to confirm that.
Just had to unmute myself there. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, so we did not net add. What we did was we combined. We had several open positions as well. And so we were operating from a position where we not only had open positions that we've not been able to fill, but we had several part-time positions that really didn't give us the kind of coverage that we needed. And so it was a better way for us to ensure at least the labor in the short term that we need to have, just to make sure that we can keep everything clean.
It's kind of Billy and Ron were the linchpin for that. You know, those are the 2 I was referring to. If you look at the resignations and changes, when they decided to resign, that led to some dominoes that we were able to take advantage of.
So how many open positions do we have? Not yeah, how many like certified positions do we have open right now?
Yep, those are listed at the bottom of the page, and we currently have parapro, 2nd grade teacher, a 5th grade teacher, both 1-year positions, and a long-term special ed teacher. That's an upcoming leave replacement.
Are we filling those with subs at the moment, or how are we filling those?
No, that's part of the process that we've been using to replace our we had to repurpose some of our reading specialists, math interventionists.
Okay.
And so our goal is to, as we're in person, well, either way, full remote, to now transition them back to their original positions. We will not be at full capacity in either of those areas, but if we could hire those 2 individuals, and I know they just did interviews yesterday for that. And so potentially within the next couple of weeks, probably by the next board meeting, those will be filled.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, at a motion and a second, roll call, please.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Adamchuk. Adamchuk? Maybe he's on mute. I'll come back.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Twice,
Yes.
Percola,
Yes.
and Dusterhoff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. All right, regular action items. I need a motion to approve our request for waiver of section 17-1.5 of the school code.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
All right. Any questions at this point? All right, roll call, please.
Twice,
Yes.
Percola,
Yes.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to increase the substitute pay rate for paraprofessionals to $90.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Did you get that, Sandy?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, roll call, please.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Swice,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Percola.
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to establish the date for a joint D91 and D92 board meeting to receive the feasibility study.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Dr. Arnold, do you want to go over this real quickly?
Yes. So this is the date we had originally, when we planned on the study being given to us in June, we thought this would happen in late June or July. That was pre-COVID. And so we've been waiting on that. And as the board knows, it's been a little bit of a challenge to try to find a date that works for both the D91 and D92 board. There's about 16 people you're trying to schedule around, and we do have that. So that's a public meeting. All of us would prefer, we always envision that being in a gym at one of the two sites and everybody being in the same room. That was all, once again, pre-pandemic. And so this will be virtual between both boards of education, and the public is invited and encouraged to hear the results. There's no reason to think that there's any action that would be taken. The earliest anything could even be thought about being brought to the community for any type of a vote or consideration is the spring election cycle in 2022. It can't happen this November. It can't happen next election period in April. So that's April 21. So we're talking the earliest would be spring of 2022. So that's it. It should be informative, and we'll make it available for the public to read once it's been presented to both boards on January 6th.
Hey, Tim, is that that consulting firm walking us through that, or is that us?
No, yes, correct. They present to us.
Got it.
Yep. So all you're doing is approving the date to hold the joint meeting, and D91, I believe, is already approved January 6th.
7 p.m., is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Arnold. And thank you for clarifying when the even first possible point of action could be, just so that the community is clear that that nothing could happen for quite a while, even after we receive the report. So we have it. We first and second. Roll call, please.
Adamchuk?
Yes.
Swice? Swice?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Ferkaluk?
Yes.
Gurecki?
Yes.
Middleton?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Yes.
And Dusterhoff?
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the agreement for coverage of classes payment. Dr. Arnold?
Do you want to do the first and second, or?
Oh, sorry, I need a motion, yes.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Dr. Arnold?
Yes, so this is just some cleanup that didn't happen last contract negotiations. It does directly relate to substitute issues. There are times, typically the junior high, it could apply to any teacher, but more than likely it would be a junior high thing where they need coverage for a class period. If a teacher has a planning period, they would be paid the standard hourly rate, that fraction of it, whatever fraction of an hour that class period is, to cover that class. That's been standard in junior high schools since the dawn of time. We don't have that in place, and it's something that the union has endorsed, and I wholeheartedly endorse. So recommend we approve it.
All right, any questions?
Tim,
All
you
right.
said the union's behind it, the union supports it?
Yeah, so this is a memorandum of agreement, and that's the only way we can make these type of agreements is if the union and the board both agree. We could not do this unilaterally. This is something that the union would have to agree. And I think the updated document does have the union president's signature on it.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, roll call, please.
Twice?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Yes.
Gurecki?
Yes.
Middleton?
Yes.
Ferkaluk?
Yep.
Adamczyk,
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the proposal for emergency continuation of food service.
Motion.
I'll second it.
Dr. Arnold?
Yep. So we did have a situation in one of our kitchens a couple weeks ago where we had to, due to a positive case, quarantine the kitchen staff. And we were barely able to successfully pull together a variety of staff to make sure we had no interruption in food service to our students. But as a result, we knew that wasn't acceptable going forward. So actually, I need to give credit to Mr. Blatchley for this idea. To look at the high school and to partner with them, and technically it's with Quest Food Service. They have the high school contract. They helped a few districts out back in the spring with their food service, not us. But this was our eye opener that we want to provide continuous food service to our students. And given a pandemic, this is a situation we want to avoid if it happens again. We need to be clear, in no way, shape, or form are we entering any type of discussion or ideas around outsourcing. This is clearly not that. This is in the event that our staff cannot prepare the food, that we would immediately notify Quest. And they have, through this proposal, promised that they could get us up and running at the latest 3 days. Ideally, we wouldn't have an interruption, but there is a chance, there's orders that need to be made, food that needs to be ready to go, it needs to be prepped, we could go a day or two trying to do it ourselves, or maybe without food service for a school. That would be the worst case scenario that we want to avoid. It would be made on site at the high school. They have more staff, and they could take care of that easier. Our staff could easily pick it up in a van, bring it back to the site, and it could go home with the students. The students would never know anything different. So our goal is never to miss a day, and this gets us down that road.
Okay.
It's a proposal right now. If the board accepts it, there would be a formal agreement that would come back at the November board meeting. I do have, and the high school endorses this also. I've talked to Dr. McBride about this. Of course, he's a great partner as always. And Quest has agreed that between now and the November board meeting, if something should happen, they would still follow through with the plan. So we do need to have a formal agreement, but in the interim, we're good.
All right, that was my question. Was this at least guaranteeing us through into November?
Yep.
Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Percola,
Yes.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Adamczyk,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Swice,
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. All right, board discussion items. The IASB delegate assembly positions.
I think the only position, it's not the position for the individual board member.
Yeah.
Gurecki is that. It's just if we want to deviate from any of the positions from the slate.
Any of the recommendations that the delegates committee has a position on. Again, I just recommend that the board members just review the documentation, and if you've got a comment or concern, we can bring it up at the November meeting before the conference. As in years past, the important thing is just to be informed.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Gurecki, for all your work on representing us on that. All right, information items are listed in the agenda. Communication, thank you notes. Did we have any thank you notes?
We do. Unfortunately, it's in the office and I'm not. We got a thank you note from Star Londos and family for a sympathy plant that we sent.
Okay. Very good. And I need a motion. Sorry, is it in here? Sorry, I'm looking at it now. The wording is it in here?
The memo is attached, yeah.
Oh, there it is. I see it. The board may enter into closed session for the purpose of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. 5 ILS 120. I need a motion to move into closed session.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
who was second?
That was Jake.
Thank you.
There is no, the board is going into closed session. When we come out, there will be no action items. No more actions will be taken tonight. I don't think there will even be any discussion. Sorry, I take that back. We will approve the closed minutes when we come out, but that is not really that exciting or interesting. That will be the only action item we take, and there will be no other discussion after this portion of the meeting for the public. Roll call, please.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Fricula,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Adam Check,
Yes.
Swayze,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. Dr. Arnold, is there a separate meeting?
How did we do that last time? Help me out. Do I need to create one real quick?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought we used like an ALT meeting or something like that.
Right.
We'll
Something
do
you would,
that. Yep, I'll do that and I will send you the invite right now.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you,
thanks,
Sandy.
Andy.
Thanks,
You.
Andy.
Thank you, Sandy.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.